How much is the rental management fee? A more important question is, what does the management fee include and what other fees are involved? Let's break it down in a way that makes some sense. Hi, I'm Mark Pearson. I'm a real estate broker in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, and I help a lot of out-of-state clients buy and sell homes on the Outer Banks. When most people say how much is the management fee, they're talking about the commission, the percentage of the rent. Management fees are a real estate commission. They are negotiable just like all other real estate commissions. So there's no set fee, but I will share a little later in the video the number that I use when I'm putting together pro formas and projections for people. One thing to keep in mind is that these companies tend to be pretty close in the total fees that they charge. So if you see fees from 3 or 4 companies that are all similar within a couple of percent of each other and one that's half as much as everyone else, it's probably because they've backed out all of the fees from their standard service level and they a la carte everything back in. There are some reasons why companies may charge a little less, and let's dive in on those. The first reason is the specific house. That could be the location and the ease of renting that property. The amount of rent involved can also affect a management fee. So when you have a real rental machine, like one of those 18-bedroom big oceanfront homes that's doing close to 7 figures in annual rent, you will see companies that'll take a lower percentage rate than what they may for a smaller home. Another scenario where you may see a lower commission offered by one company is when they're trying to break into a market. So if you have a market that's dominated by 1 or 2 big rental companies and a company has made it a target to increase their presence in that market, they may be willing to do it for a lower rate. They may also be willing to lock that rate in for a certain period of time to make sure that they can maintain that presence. The biggest reason that you see a difference in fees between companies is because it's not an apples to apples comparison. It's just about what's included in a fee at one company compared to another company. So when you're talking to rental companies, make sure you understand what's included and what's billed separately. If I miss anything about fees in this video, please let me know down in the comments. So let's talk about a few things that may or may not be included in the base management fee. And a lot of those things occur on turnover day, the day that renters check out and a new set of guests come in. Cleaning fees still generally go through the rental company, but most rental companies apply the fee to the guest. Same goes with linens. Linens used to be optional in a lot of Outer Banks properties, and now they're pretty much standard across the board, but it is a fee that is typically charged to the renter. I don't know of any companies that are charging an inspection fee. That is typically included within the management fee, but it's definitely something to take note of and make sure that you understand when you're talking to rental companies. One of the big ones can be pool and spa, and some companies have in-house pool and spa cleaners. They may or may not be cheaper than going on your own. And landscaping, depending on the property and whether or not you have a lawn that needs to be mowed between guests, is one to consider as well. One place where you will see some separation between companies is maintenance. I'm not talking about the big off-season maintenance, just the weekly, like when a guest calls and says that there's a light bulb out. Vacation rentals see more wear and tear than a typical primary residence, and things do get broken and things just stop working. So there will be maintenance calls during the rental season. Some rental companies include 1 or 2 calls per week during the rental season. Other companies don't include any. Make sure you understand if there's a trip charge. Make sure you understand if there's an additional charge for after-hours trip calls. Make sure you understand how emergencies are handled. Like if the refrigerator stops working in the middle of the week in the middle of July, does the rental company have the authority to replace the refrigerator before they talk to you, or do you need to approve the purchase? These are just things to be aware of. You want to know about these things before you're in the situation. Let's talk about questions you should ask any rental company that you're interviewing. The first question for the rental company is probably the reason you clicked on this video. What is your commission? What is your management fee? What percent of rent am I paying for you to manage this property? I also told you earlier in the video that I would share what I use when I'm doing pro formas. The number that I use when I'm putting together a projection is 16%. And as stated earlier, there's no average, there's no typical when we're talking about negotiable commissions, but that usually puts me close enough where it may be a couple percent lower, it may be a percent higher, but it puts me in the ballpark where 1 or 2%, one way or the other, is probably not enough to affect a buying decision for one of my clients. And if it is, if the numbers are tight, then once we get to that point, we can bring in some rental companies and we can get a more concrete number. So you find out what the commission percentage is. Now we need to know what's included and what is separate. Ask about how the cleanings and linens are handled. Ask about maintenance and trip fees and after hours fees. Also, what is their recommended reserve? One other really important question to ask when you're interviewing rental companies is, how do they calculate the fee? In most cases with Outer Banks rental companies, you're paying a management fee on the actual rent that you would receive. So the difference is normally the set fees, things like linens, things like cleaning, things that don't change week to week regardless of what the amount of the rent is. This is important because you don't want to pay a management fee on fixed fees that are generally paid by the guest. I hope this video answered your questions on rental management fees. If you're thinking about an investment on the Outer Banks and want to talk about your specific situation, like where you should look and what your budget actually gets you in different locations, send me a text or email. My information is below. My name is Mark, by the way. I'd love to help, whether you're thinking about buying something in 3 weeks, 3 months, or 3 years. Feel free to reach out. Until next time, I hope to see you around the Outer Banks.